Alrighty. The next section deals with the kingdom of Blackmoor itself and the lands around the Blackmoor. And like I said in the beginning of this review, Blackmoor was just kind of the default setting for me in the early days of D&D. So I guess I didn't know a lot of the details. And one of the things that I found interesting about this is that Blackmoor is very small in a lot of ways. The capital itself has only got 5,400 people in it. The biggest town, the biggest city in this area has got 18,000 people. This is a small-scale world. This is not a world where you can get lost in the crowd, because there aren't many crowds. Most places you're going to be visiting are going to have a population that isn't that large. Now, in this era, when you would have had the same technology level as our world, there were bigger cities. You could have been in places that had 200 or 300,000 people in them. So I find it interesting that they decided to really have a smaller scale world, that things are more intimate. This is good for some kinds of games. It's necessarily bad for others. I like bigger spaces. I like a little more cosmopolitan. I like more along the lines of having a city, a main city, that's got a lot of people from everywhere. I want to have languages tossed all over the place. I want alien races that are, I want exotic. I want, huge bazaars with people buying and selling things from all over the planet. You know what I mean? And I guess I may want a slightly higher level of fantasy than this world is aimed at, which is fine. It's my taste in this game. Don't necessarily have to mesh. But it was interesting that the scale was a little lower than in my memory of it was. You know what I mean? And the background on this is excellent. There's lots of useful information in here. If you want to run Blackmoor and the area around it, a lot of flavor in this, lots of detail, lots of information about the peoples and the places that you want to run. A lot of the nice stuff on holidays and the calendar. I kind of like that. They did a nice job there. I have one small thing about the weapons. There's a weapon in here which is essentially, it's called a pellet or stone bow. It's a crossbow that fires a pellet, a sphere. Okay, it's like a metal sphere like this. Okay, and in it, it's a dwarven weapon in this setting, and it's supposed to be firing them powerfully enough to be armor penetrating. Now, no crossbow ever made in the world is going to generate enough energy to fire a spear that it's going to be armor penetrating. It just isn't going to happen. You need firearm levels of power for that. And spears aren't armor penetrating anyway. You need conical shaped rounds. In addition, crossbows themselves were great at penetrating armor. And the bow they present in here is an exotic weapon, which again makes no sense. If you want to have crossbows are simple weapons. If you want a more powerful version, call it the Great Crossbow or an arbalest, which is what they were actually called. Make it martial and give it. In this game, they say they knock off 2 points of armor. That's cool. It's armor penetrating. But you should make the heavy crossbow should knock off 1. And if you're using the proper kind of bolts, which are designed to have a point that is armor piercing, I would make light crossbows and ignore 1, heavy crossbows ignore 2, and this version, the arbalest, ignore 4, and that would make them much more deadly. Now, of the projectile that fires spears, little bullets, little musket balls essentially, I was going to call it pellet bow or stone bow. They are real-world things. I've been using them for years. You just take a crossbow, you have the range, make it bludgeoning. Because the range isn't going to be there. They're not as stable. Bolts are more stable because they've got fletchings, and that stabilizes them in flight. A sphere, because you're not spinning it like it comes out of a gun barrel, so you have no inherent stability. This weapon's weird. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't remember it from my Blackmoor in the past. I'm not sure why it's here. It wouldn't work the way the game says it works. Again, section on the lands around the Blackmoor area, which is good if you want to use them in lots of places for adventuring, like Valley of the Ancients and the Realm of the Egg, the lands of the Kumasti, the Hawk, which is another region, which is all very flavorful, very well done, because of good seeds for adventures. Then we have stuff on the religions of the north. Whole bunch of stuff on deities. Now, one thing about this, all the symbols of the deities are very interesting, attractive, well done. In fact, all the art in this is from at least average to excellent. But the symbols are complex. If you look at real-world religious symbols, they're very simple. Things that very simple people, pentacle, an ankh, that you can draw or sketch or carve easily. These symbols are much more complex. I understand why they did this, because coming up with a selection of original simple symbols is very hard, while coming up with more complex symbols is easier. But to me, it didn't look like religious symbols. They look like paintings. They look like little sketches. So that was just my personal thing. Lots of humans, deities for like the humans, some specific deities for dwarves and gnomes, and some specific deities for elves. Interestingly, there are no evil elven deities. I found that interesting. Then we have rogues, regents, and rascals, a nice selection of non-player characters. Not only are they useful, but again, you can file off the serial numbers and reuse the stats over and over and over as other people. But it's a nice idea of how people in this world are built as far as their skill selection, feat selection, things like that. Very useful to have an example as a player and a GM. Then we have a section of monsters, which are all pretty decent. Nothing really popped out at me and said, "Ooh, these are wicked cool!" But they're all very usable. And I enjoyed the fact that they had things that oddly made me think of Blackmoor here. And again, harkening back to memories of 30 years ago, so I don't know how tainted they are, but a couple of the things in this just made me think, yeah, beastmen, and steel and wood methods, and the Bale-born orcs. There were just things that to me clicked on some level. Then we have an adventure, and I'll freely admit that I did not read the adventure. I find reading adventures, and if I'm not going to run them, very tedious. But if it's up to the same level of the rest of the book, it's well worth your time to read. Now, I also have the Player's Handbook, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet. I'm probably going to get around to that in the near future. I don't know if it's going to be the next thing I read or not, because I have a large queue of books I need to read. But this is definitely well worth your time, and I got this from the trollandtoad.com. So check them out if you're looking for this, because I got this 3 books for $18, but that's shipping included. It's a great deal. I don't know. Haven't been able to find this anyplace else for that price. So if you want a copy, go get one, because it's worth it. Blackmoor was a great memories. It's well executed. Nice to see it brought up to 3.5. I think I might prefer if it were setting for the Pathfinder rules, because I just simply prefer them. I would have liked to see in the Pathfinder version of the Noble, so you improved it, make it a little more interesting, or again make it a first level or some kind of feat chain that allows anybody to have noble abilities. It really, to me, screams to be a point-based class for the Everstone setting, because that would make perfect sense. You could then spend the points in the class as you go, class features as you go, and become better at being a noble while becoming better at everything else you do as a player character. But that's neither here nor there. I guess I'm saying is Everstone is a good setting. So Blackmoor is definitely worth your time. It's worth a read. It was fun. It was a nice trip down memory lane. It does exactly what it said it's supposed to do. It gives you the ability to play the Blackmoor world. So I definitely recommend this if that's something you're interested in. It was nice to see his work. It was nice to know that he got this out to the world before he passed. That was important. So if you enjoy the Blackmoor setting from 30 years ago, you'd enjoy this, and I recommend it.